Showcasing local talent, professionals, and everyday people making Salt Lake City what it is today. It's time for another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast.
Hey, but let's welcome everybody out today to episode 313 of I Am Salt Lake podcast. My name's Chris Hollifield.
And I'm Chrissy Hollifield.
This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Five Wives Vodka, Amanda K Memories, and Wizarding Days, but we're going to tell you more about all of them later. Hey, today on the podcast, Chrissy and I get the opportunity to sit down and chat with local Salt Lake City barber, Kylee Howell. We get to find out her story. We find out what got her interested in becoming a barber. We talk about her upcoming move of shop locations, and she even shared with us a Dove commercial that she was recently on.
And I think we're going to try to put that on the show notes.
No, absolutely.
So visit the website.
Absolutely, which you got to check this out if you haven't.
She was seriously so much fun to talk to.
We're going to get into all of that here in just a second. I do want to talk about, though, before we get into this interview, I had a blast this last Wednesday. Chrissy's work had a work party at the Loveland Living Planet Aquarium.
We finally got to go to the aquarium.
I drive by it all the time when I go down to visit my mom down in Utah County.
It's one of those places you're like, I'm going to go there one day.
We got the opportunity to go there, and I was actually impressed with it. However, all the animals were sleeping.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was impressed. It looks like an amazing place, and we have to go back in the daytime. But we got to finally walk through it at 9 o'clock at night?
It was about 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night.
And, okay, I was really excited to see the sloths. And you know what? They were all curled up in their baskets, fast asleep, and I didn't get to see a sloth.
And by the way, I mean, we're not sponsored by Loveland Living Planet.
No, we're not. We were just really excited to see animals.
I just wanted to share something that I was really excited about. You know, we're always asking people on the podcast, where should out of town people go? Where should they visit?
The aquarium would be a great place.
The Loveland Living Planet Aquarium is going to be right on my top 10 list.
The hardest part is probably for me trying not to climb into the things with the animals and pet them, because I want to hug a penguin and I want to hold a sloth and I want to do all the fun things.
Let's go back there though another time.
Yes.
We're definitely going to go back there in the middle of the day when they're awake. But with all that being said, let's quit talking here, Chrissy. Okay. Let's let the listeners hear this awesome conversation that we had with Kylee Howell when she came over to our office and shared her story. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy. If you had 30 seconds to tell me about yourself, say you and I were at a bar, we're having a drink, what would you say?
I would say that I'm a barber. That's usually what I tell people first. I would say that I'm from Utah, small town in Utah, though. I like to highlight that part of it. I would say that I like my family most days. I would say that I'm married, and I would say that I became a barber to do something that matters.
Yeah.
That's what barbering is for me.
And we'll get into all of that. Obviously the barbering here shortly, because I'm intrigued. I was actually looking into barbering school for a second, and there's still a part of me that's like, but you know, I'm 40 now, and it's kind of like, you know, to go into barbering school. Well, we'll get into that here in a second. We'll get into that. So you said a small town in Utah.
Yeah.
What small town?
Price.
Carbon
County.
Oh, really?
Okay. Price. I know exactly where that is.
A lot of good people come out of Price.
It seems that way. I don't know. I know a few people from that area. How long were you there for?
Until I was like 12 or 13. So like just at that point of becoming a teenager, I moved up here
to
with
Salt
my
Lake.
dad.
Yeah. And is your dad still here?
Yep.
Family still here?
Yep. And most of my family that lived in Price is up here now.
What did you think at 12 and 13 to go from Price to Salt Lake City? I mean, do you remember that at all?
It was a culture shock, but in the exact opposite way that most people get culture shocked in Utah. Price was really diverse.
Sure.
Like I went to a Catholic school, and I knew one Mormon family because there was one Mormon family in the Catholic school that I went to. But like my family was Italian and Mexican. I hung out with a lot of Greek people. Like there's just a lot of diversity in Price. And like I knew about Mormons because Utah history in school, but like when I moved up here, there were Mormons everywhere. I was like, oh, okay, I get like what they're saying about Utah, but usually it's the opposite. Like when somebody from a small town moves to a big city, they get really shocked by diversity, and it was the opposite. I was shocked by like the lack of diversity in such a big place.
Was that hard?
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I adapted pretty quickly, but like, you know, like I said, I had gone to Catholic school, and that was, you know, my life, like all of the time. And I didn't even know anybody that was Catholic when I moved up here. My dad wasn't or anything. So all of the people around me, neighborhood wise, and all of the people around me that I met in school were Mormon. So I started going to Mormon church. But like, I was kind of like, not a bad kid, but like, you know, I listened to like,
you were
CDs
independent
with swear words. And yeah, I had my own, I was independent. That's a good way of saying it. But like, I had to adapt very quickly and like, just hang out with my Mormon friends all the time. And they were awesome. Like their families were the best. They took me in, and, you know, I was the rascal down the street whose parents didn't go to church, but they were super, super nice to me. Like my teenage years were good years, but it was, like I said, kind of the opposite of what you usually get going from a small town to a big one.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because I've heard stories where the Mormon kids weren't allowed to play with the non-Mormon kids.
Yeah, I've seen that happen. I mean, a lot of it really is, I guess, more
It just depends, I guess.
different areas.
Yeah.
What area you're in, but it's cool that they were so open and like open their arms to
definitely
you.
came
and their
with
homes
like
to
a
you.
caveat of like, you're going to get baptized, right? And like, I wanted to.
And maybe that was their underlying
down.
thing, right? They were like, oh, maybe we can convert
For
this
sure.
girl,
It
right?
wasn't
If we're-
really
if we're
underlying.
nice.
Like there were
straight
a
up.
lot of, there was a lot of conversations, because my dad was very like, when you turn 18 years old, you can do that, but you're not going to do that now. And they encouraged me very persistently, like,
So what happened at 18? Did you get baptized?
no, by that time I had like figured out that I was gay. And even when I was going to church, like I knew that I was gay. I was just trying really hard not to be gay, but I was out by the time I was
Sure.
18, and I was like, thanks, Dad, for like not making me have to like get my name off records and go through that whole thing. But like, that was how I rebelled as a teenager. I remember one time literally, so there's an LDS movie. It's called, Saturday's Warrior.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh,
yeah.
I have that movie memorized.
Why wouldn't you?
It's
It's
the
incredible.
best.
Wait a
It
minute,
really
I didn't
is.
know this
I
about
used to
you,
listen to the
Chrissy.
soundtrack on tape every
the
day.
soundtrack is incredible. So I asked my dad, my friends were all getting together to watch Saturday's Warrior at this friend's house. And I asked my dad if I can, and he said no. And I snuck out of my house to do it. So
That's
that was like
amazing.
my way of rebelling, was like, I'm going to family
That's
home
like
evening.
the most awesome rebelling, because you're just going to just
Seriously
happy
though,
and
Chris,
good.
like that soundtrack, just give it a listen.
No,
if
no,
you could
have
watch
you
the
ever
movie,
seen it?
I mean,
do
I
it.
grew up Mormon. So
did
I
you
mean,
see Saturday's Warrior?
I probably.
Oh, I'm going to make you watch it.
It's
You
so
have to.
incredible.
It's the cheesiest, most wonderful movie.
Okay.
It's a
sure.
musical, but you're going to watch
No,
it.
I'll watch
'Cause I
it.
said
I'll watch
so.
it. So as a kid, what did you want to be as growing up? I mean, have you wanted to be a barber your whole life? Or
No. So my mom was a beautician, cosmetologist, and she had a salon in our house when I was growing up. And I wanted to be the opposite of whatever that was. Cause like I didn't like the smell of perms and you know,
who
the hair
does?
dye and the nails and everything. And, you know, she was a Mary Kay consultant. So there was also makeup and just like the whole bit. And I was like, not
It just
into it.
really turned you off.
I wanted to be like a teacher. I wanted to be a WNBA player. I mean, like I've thought about this. Like, what did I want to be when I was a kid? I really wasn't set on anything. I had like all these random things that I would be into for a while. And then I would just kind of drop them. And in high school, I realized like this is kind of a problem, because we were doing like career, you know, counseling or whatever, trying to get ready to go to college. And I had
You had no idea?
no idea, none.
So what did you do? Did you go to college?
No.
Yeah.
I graduated high school early because I just thought I knew everything and I was ready to just get out of there. And I worked some odds and ends jobs. I worked at the University of Utah. I worked for Xerox for a while. And then I got a job at Comcast, which was actually the last job I had before I went to barber school. So I worked there for about 5 years. And that was the first place I saw like a career path. I was into entertainment. I was into technology. Like where I was at kind of made sense to me. So I was like, okay, yeah, I could settle into this, except for the fact that I was miserable. Like really genuinely
Why were
hated
you?
it.
Why? just
Because-
working for the
Well,
man?
it's Comcast.
It wasn't even really. It
Were you
wasn't even really
was
that.
it a phone job or was it like a
no? I didn't
technique-
really work with customers very often. I worked with our technicians and like within in-house dispatch people, and I loved the people that I worked with. Like we had an awesome team. But I was working a ton of hours and like it was a good job, you know, good benefits, free cable, all that kind of stuff. But I was working a ton of hours and like occasionally getting yelled at and getting really frustrated and these really high stress levels over cable. I mean, it literally, I mean, I would
Like, it's
have
just
people
TV.
screaming at me like, what am I to do with my children if my internet won't work? And I'm just like,
take
I
them
don't
outside?
know. Yeah, like go outside. Like I get it. The world we live in, you know, the internet technology, I get it. But really, I was just being screamed at about cable and again, put in these really high stress and it was cable.
Sure.
It was internet. And it was just like, this can't be like what it
shouldn't be
is.
affecting
You know what I mean?
that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes the quote unquote safe career paths really aren't worth it because you can't be yourself. You spend so much time just doing things to keep other people happy and feeling miserable yourself.
And in fairness, like there are plenty of people and plenty of jobs and like you just do that. Like some people, you just work the job and I just couldn't see
do
myself.
it.
I couldn't. But I didn't know. I had no clue what I was going to do.
You were just like,
I
well,
had no other
this
options.
is what I got to do.
I didn't go to
Yeah.
college.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, well, you know, I'm skilled here. 5 years isn't nothing. You can retire at 25. So I was just like, okay, I could do 20 more years of this. And really, I'm just like, no, like there's no possible way.
So, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so what was the catalyst for you?
A haircut.
Really?
Yeah. So I had cut my hair short a couple months beforehand, and a friend of mine like cut my hair at a salon, and she had been cutting my hair for years, and it was just kind of an awkward thing, and not because it was a salon, because I literally grew up in one. It was fine, but I just wasn't really getting the thing that I was going for. And she was like, why don't you go to a barbershop? I've got a buddy. He works at this barbershop. You should go. So I went to this barbershop. It was downtown. It was called Zurich. They're called Curriculum now. Barber there by the name of Logan was my barber. One day I'm talking to him and telling him about Comcast and how bad I hate my job and getting yelled at about cable and whatever. And on the flip side of that, he's telling me how much he loves his job and he's in charge of his own hours. And, you know, he gets to learn about style and grooming all the time and all this stuff. And, you know, meanwhile, like the atmosphere in the barbershop was awesome. And I had sort of grown up in a barbershop. I've got an uncle who owns the Main Street barbershop in the town that I grew up in. And literally, I mean, I would crawl all over his barber chair and hang out there. Him and my mom were really good friends. And it literally wasn't until that moment that I was like,
Interesting. Yeah.
why? Yeah. And he was like, you should go. Like, we have a great barber school here. You should go. And I literally left that appointment, called my then fiance and was like, I think I'm going to quit my job and go to barber school. Like, is that fine? And she was just like, one question, like, can you make that work? And I was like, yeah, I think so. She's like, okay, do it.
That's so
I did.
cool. It's so great to have a supportive partner.
100% would not.
And
have
how
been
long
able
ago
to-
was this?
That was like that was September of 2014.
Okay.
So 3.5.
That's a scary thing. That's a big scary thing to be like, I'm going to quit everything I know, everything that's stable, and try something new.
It was
That
terrifying.
costs money.
Absolutely.
Like, it's not just trying something new. It's trying something new that you have to pay for.
Yeah. I mean, that was terrifying. But there, again, I had been so miserable for so long and she knew that. She felt that. It comes home with you.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think that's why she was so supportive, because I think she didn't see that as sustainable either.
She's like,
yeah,
anything
it
to
was-
not have you miserable,
Right?
right? Like, I don't care what it is.
Yeah, really. But it was terrifying and it happened so quickly. Like literally that haircut was on Saturday. On Tuesday, I called the school, like, what do you guys need from me? Got all the paperwork that they needed and put in my 2 weeks notice on Friday, and then started school like 14 days later.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
It was wild.
Now, I mean, obviously you don't regret it, right?
Not
Yeah.
at all.
Not one bit.
And now I like give people terrible advice because like that's not always a good idea, right? To like quit your stable job and just go for your dream. It's not always the best idea.
I think it depends on the person.
So well.
Yeah.
Everybody's different.
True.
You know,
That's true,
if
yeah.
you have like 10 kids at home that you're having to feed is
You
one
have
thing,
to think
right?
and be a little reasonable about those things. Luckily, I didn't, and like you were saying, I had a super supportive partner, so it made it doable. But now I'm just constantly like, if there is something that you even halfway enjoy that can pay your bills, go and do that. Like you'll be so much happier, and maybe it won't pay your bills. Like right now, I'm probably not making as much money as I was at Comcast, but I was like plateauing there, and I'm just getting started.
Sure.
So, I mean, you definitely have to work harder for it, but it's better to work harder for yourself than somebody else, I think.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So what barber school? You go to the barber school, right? It's like 7200 South. Is that where you went to school?
The barber school. I kind of lucked out because I just live here and that was just kind of convenient for me. But once I got into school, some of the people in my class, like one dude was from Canada and had moved here. One dude was from Vegas. There were
For
people
that
from
school.
New York, people from all over. And it was like, kind of same question. Like what? We asked our buddy from Canada.
School.
The year before he came to school, him and his then fiance, now wife, had taken a year. They quit their jobs. They traveled all over the world. Went back to Canada, got married, and a month later, he moved to Utah to go to barber school. And I was like, buddy, why did you move to Utah, Salt Lake City? Like, what the heck? And he
Because
was
it's
like,
cool.
yes. Listen, it is. I know that. But
No,
like,
I know what you mean.
A random Canadian doesn't know that.
I'm giving you a hard
and
time.
he said, I mean, he was like, listen, like when I was traveling, when I was in Europe, I looked at schools there. I was looking at schools in LA and all these different places, and everything just kept coming back that like, if you want the best barbering program possible, go to this school in Midvale, Utah.
Why was it the best barbering program?
So the gentleman that opened it, his name was Tim Height, and so when I went, he was in his 90s. I think he turned 90 while I was there. He'd been doing it since he was like 17, 18, something like that.
he had
He'd
some
been doing
skills.
it a long time. And there was another instructor there by the name of Milt Larson who had been there. He had been taught by Mr. Height, and he'd been doing it since he was like 15. He was in his 60s. So between the two of them, over 100 years of experience, and they really just had that like very traditional way of approaching barbering. They had seen all of the trends come and go and come and go and come back and go again. And so, yeah, that's pretty much what brought everybody here was like the reputation of the two of them. And you'd be really surprised, like, well, I don't know how in the barber, like, but some of the best barbers in, again, New York, LA, they went to the same school.
Right here in the solid, was that Midvale?
Midvale.
I guess
Yeah,
it is.
Midvale.
It's kind of wild.
So where did you, like, how long were you in barber school? It's a pretty quick program, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a 6-month program.
Okay.
Obviously if you miss any school, that kind of adds on. And I went to school during the holidays. So when all was said and done, I graduated, I think in like April. So it was like 7.5
Where did you go? Where did you work right out of school?
Right out of school, I worked at a barbershop called Another Level Barbershop over on North Temple and 6th West.
Was it pretty tough to get into a barbershop out of school there?
When I first got out of school, there were quite a few barbershops in Salt Lake City, but in the last 3 years, it's kind of exploded.
Yeah.
It is really
So
exploded.
it wasn't really the same, like, oh, I could go here or I could go here or I could go here. It was kind of like, okay, if this is my style, there's maybe 2 places to go for. And if this is my style, there's maybe 2 places to go for. I didn't really know what my style was.
You just
or what
wanted a job.
Yeah. I was just, I was ready to work. I had been in school doing $5 haircuts and not making any money off of them. So
Yeah.
like I was ready to make some money. And so I worked at Another Level, and I worked with 2 guys there, Colby and Zach, and they had been doing it for about 3 years. So about the same amount of time as I've been doing it now, they had been doing it when I started with them. And I learned almost as much about barbering from the 2 of them in 6 months as I did in school in 6 months.
Interesting.
It was the education like just starts when you're getting out of school.
Well, I'm sure you're still learning.
Well,
Absolutely.
there's something
Yeah.
about on-the-job education that you can't ever learn in school.
Totally.
It's completely unique.
Totally. Yeah. So, that was an awesome experience. Like I said, there's still two of like my favorite barbers. I watch haircuts that they do and I'm just like, what? How do you do that? It's crazy.
What kind of haircuts? What do you call that when you shave stuff into the size of your head?
Like designs and stuff.
Those are impressive.
Yeah, I mean, the barbers that can do those, I have people that come in and ask for them, and I'm like, listen, I can do something simple on your head, but
Like a lightning bolt.
unless you have 4 hours and like a black Sharpie, it's not going to look like it does on Instagram.
Yeah.
I think Instagram has really done a disservice. Which
Do they literally have Instagram pulled up on their phone?
Absolutely,
They're like,
I get people come in,
put Michael Jordan on my hair.
and like, let me just say, it has been great for
Barbering.
my business
Sure.
and barbering as a whole. Like, that platform for people to share their work and stuff has been invaluable. But at the same time, yes, people
have
absolutely bring in an Instagram post like, I want this. And it's this literally like a Chicago skyline.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm just like, I'm not going to do that. It's going to grow out in 3 days. Like,
for real.
what? So yeah, there's kind of an expectation there, but you know, the mark of a good barber is like in all of the details, my mom always says that 'cause she's a cosmetologist and they're two different jobs and not a lot of people know that. A lot of people just assume if you can cut hair, you can cut hair. But my mom will always tell me like, I don't do the, like around the ears and the neckline up. I don't do that as good as you do. You pay more attention to that detail. She wasn't taught to pay attention to that detail. So that's kind of the mark of a good barber.
Sure.
And Colby and Zach were like, details down to the T. And that's kind of what I learned from them.
So fast forwarding a little bit, I mean, we don't need to get into each barbershop you were at necessarily, but Friar Tuck's is your own barbershop.
Yes.
What made you decide to take that leap? Or I noticed it's kind of a traditional thing in barbering is you want to eventually have your own shop.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why?
A lot of people get into barbering to be their own boss. And you were saying earlier, you had kind of thought about
Yeah.
it, but you're 40 now and that should be no reason to deter you. I went to school with, 50, 55-year-old dudes. This was their second career and they were done listening to what somebody else was telling them to do. And they were here to do a job where they could be the boss and they were going to start their own shop. And I mean, the average age seriously is probably 35.
Interesting. Yeah.
You have a few younger people, but most people that are there, again, are people who have kind of been around, they've done some jobs and they've realized like, I want to be my own boss. So even when you're going and working for other barbers, I think a lot of people that get into barbering have that underlying idea of like, I'm going to be in charge one day.
You mentioned before we started recording, you're actually in the process of moving locations. What's the address? I mean, just to kind of even so people listening could find you. What address should we say? I guess both addresses
current and new.
Yeah.
So currently I'm more on the west side of town. So I'm on 4th South and 1594 West, so just off of Redwood Road. I'm actually inside of Sherwood Forest Mobile Home Community, and I will be moving to 11 West, 1700 South. So that's just 1700 South and Main Street right on the corner.
Which is kind of by like Willie's. Is it
Yeah,
Willie's right there?
I actually share a building with Manny's.
Okay.
So I'm right on the back side of Manny's along 1700
Okay.
South.
That's a good location.
Yeah.
You're out of the
really
Sherwood
excited about
Forest,
that.
right?
Right,
Kinda-
right.
So like a mobile home park.
Is that where the Friar Tuck's name came from?
So that was a complete coincidence.
Really? Because I am loving
I didn't even
it.
get, okay,
I am
now I
loving
see
it.
that.
I didn't really realize it either. Okay, so here's how that happened. So when I was in barber school,
Thank you.
when I was in barber school, I was working for Even Stevens. I was kind of the first member of their street team. They were about 6 months into their business and it was like, we need to get the word out. We need to let people know what we're doing. So I literally went door to door, like, their Sugar House store was just getting ready to open. So I just went around to businesses in Sugar House like, have you guys ever heard of Even Stevens? And at the time they were like, no, I haven't. So, but I kind of started watching them grow. And what I took away from that is Even Stevens is a sandwich shop. For every sandwich that they sell, they donate one to a nonprofit. And I watched that and thought, okay, this is a for-profit business, treats their employees well, like has an awesome product, but they're doing something in the community that matters. Like I'm going to put a pin in that. And when I got through school and started working in some shops and stuff, I wanted to do something again. I'm like, we should be, as a barbershop, we should be like sponsoring a football team at a high school or just doing something with the visibility that barbering is kind of gaining. And nobody wanted to do it. And I thought, okay, I'll do it. So I'm like, okay, I need to start this barbershop with kind of a give back model, kind of like Even Stevens. So I decided I was going to do donations to Volunteers of America. And once I decided I was going to do donations, I was trying to think of a name for the shop. And I was kind of tossing around the idea of like Robin Hood type names. But I'm not really a Robin Hood. And as I was doing some character research, I read about Friar Tuck. He was kind of a chubby dude, liked a good meal, a good glass of wine. That resonated. He was a swordsman, so that kind of fit in with the barbering. And he used his position within the church to make sure that poor people got educated. And so that kind of felt like what I was wanting to do, like haircuts for the homeless and that kind of thing. So I was like, okay, Friar Tuck's like, that sounds good. And plus, when you think of Friar Tuck, you think of that funny little haircut he had. So that, that
you remember.
I think of him in the cartoon going, but that's the poor box.
Right.
It's a bad impression.
So I
thought it was good.
I had settled on the name, and my wife found this place for rent. And I actually grew up in a trailer, and my mom had her shop in our house in the trailer park. And I was fine with it as a kid, but I also knew like what people thought. I got a lot of shit as a kid for being the kid from the trailer park or whatever. So when my wife found this place, I was like, nope, not going to look at it. That's not where I want to start my business. Mm-hmm. And she's like, what's the harm in looking? So we pull up, and there's a big sign out front, Sherwood Forest, big pine tree with it and stuff. And we pull in, and she's freaking out. And I'm like, what? She's like, this place is called Sherwood Forest. And I'm like, so? She's like, that's where the Robin Hood story took place. And I was like, oh yeah. And I don't know, that kind of I'm a believer in like the universe sort of pushing you in directions. And that felt like
that's a
solid
pretty big sign.
Nudge.
Yeah.
We need to take a quick break here real fast and play a message here from our sponsors.
Okay.
And then we'll come back and we'll find out kind of about your move to your new location and everything. So hang tight. We'll be right back. Hey, this episode of I Am Salt Lake Podcast is proudly sponsored by Five Wives Vodka. I've been drinking Five Wives Vodka for years now.
And I just had some a few minutes ago.
So to be able to bring them on as a sponsor of this podcast is like a dream come true. When you're in Texas, you drink Tito's. When you're in Utah, you drink Five Wives. So the next time you're at your local bar or state liquor store, make sure to ask for Five Wives Vodka. And for the month of January, I don't know if you know this one yet, Chrissy, you get $3 off of a bottle, a 750 milliliter bottle of Five Wives Vodka at any Utah liquor store. You can head on over to their website, fivewivesvodka.com, where you can get drink recipes, you can find out about all of their flavors, and you can connect with them on all of their social media outlets. This episode of the podcast is also sponsored by local Salt Lake City photographer Amanda DeWolf. Do you have an event coming up that you need a photographer? Are you a local business and maybe need pictures for your products? We want to invite you to check out the work of local Salt Lake City photographer Amanda DeWolf. You can check out her work. You can get in touch. You can order prints directly on her website at amandakmemories.com. Again, website is amandakay, memories.com. This episode of the podcast is also sponsored by Wizarding Days, happening February 23rd and 24th at the Mountain America Expo Center, formerly Southtown Expo Center. If you like Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and traveling down the rabbit hole to Wonderland, you're going to love this event. Check out the creative and unique vendors, amazing artists, handcrafted wares, fantasy authors, live entertainment, 20 hours of classes and workshops that explore writing, art, science, and fantasy, magic and music, free crafts, a beard competition, which I'm excited about, makers market, butter beer, book exchange, trading post, 10-foot wardrobe from Narnia, 12-foot Stonehenge, Wonderland, and so much more. You're going to want to get your tickets in advance and save at wizardingdays.com. Days with a Z. Kids 5 and under are free. Kids 6 to 12 are $5 in advance. And 13 and up are $10 in advance. Or you can actually even get a weekend pass for $25. Get those before they sell out. Again, this is happening February 23rd and 24th at the Mountain America Expo Center. Head on over to their website, wizardingdays.com. That's days with a Z. Check everything out. And thank you so much for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. How long have you been in this location at Sherwood Forest then with Friar Tuck?
I am coming up on my official 2-year anniversary in Sherwood Forest. January 20th was like my first, January 20th, 2016 was my first day of operation.
So why are you moving?
Because I need a little bit more accessibility. In July, I was featured in a Dove commercial, and that has kind of exploded my business. Even before July, I was always kind of looking for places. Are there other spaces? Do I want to go bigger? Growth was always kind of the idea, but once the commercial aired in July, things really just kind of amped up and it became clear I needed to be able to have a second chair, which that's pretty exciting. I'm a 1-chair shop now, but I am expanding to 2 chairs. And I needed to just be in a place that was a little bit more accessible, a little bit more like neighborhood friendly. When I moved over to the West Side, it was with these grand ideas of like, yes, like other businesses are going to start opening up over here. And, you know, my clients are going to have these cool restaurants to go to after their haircuts or these cool like bars or whatever. And 2 years later, like it's just not happening. Yeah. And like, it's like on the verge. Like there's these little things that
give
pop
it another
up and you're
5
like,
years.
yes, it's going to happen. But yeah, I'm like, I don't have another 5 years. Like
So do you know who's going to be cutting hair over there with you yet? Or no?
I don't.
You're just going to have another chair, but that's going to be exciting because you'll have someone to talk to.
Yeah. I miss working with other barbers. We totally like nerd out about hair. You know, we were talking about education and literally you are constantly learning every single day. You'll just turn to the person next to you like, oh, I just tried, this with this haircut and that worked so well. Like you should try that next time. And I totally miss
it. Is really nice to work with people and bounce ideas off of them. And because you're constantly learning for the rest of your life. Because I have my clients all day and that's awesome. Like, I remember being a kid and watching my mom, like her friends would come over. She would do their hair, do their nails. They would sit there and, gab for 3 hours and then they would pay her and leave. And I was like, what the? She just got paid to hang out with her friends. Like, that's so cool. And now that's kind of what I get to do. Like my friends that I already have, they, a lot of them come to me and I've also made friends like as, I get to know my clients and stuff. So that's like a good, nice relationship. Sure. But yeah, you do kind of miss out on like the barbering camaraderie, I suppose. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of that. What was the Dove commercial you were in?
So, Dove is doing campaign. It's called Real Beauty. It's basically kind of changing the conversation about beauty, telling stories about real women and what beauty looks like from their perspective. And, maybe it's not the story you would normally hear. So, I'm a big fan of Shonda Rhimes and she had kind of put out a call on Twitter. She was the producer with the Real Beauty Productions and she just said, hey, like we're looking for people to tell their stories. If you have a story, tell it. And I did, like, not thinking they would contact me. And a little while later, they did contact me and, we did some interviews and stuff. And I thought, well, they were asking for a bunch of stories. Like, obviously, they're going to be telling, tons of stories. And they told 3 stories last year. Mine was the second one. And it was basically all about my barbershop and me kind of coming into myself once I realize that this is what I'm supposed to do with my life and kind of opened up my own shop. And I'm also trying to create a space. When I first cut my hair short and was going to barbershops, I didn't always feel comfortable. I may have definitely been welcome. It's not like I was necessarily turned away from shops, but I didn't feel like it was my space. I didn't feel like I could I just didn't feel like it was my place. And so
you felt like an intruder.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I was even told, like, in other barbershops that I worked in, the male clients would tell me, like, when you're in here, I feel like I have to watch what I say which like I appreciated the thought of like the respect of like, I'm not going to speak like super, super vulgar in front of you. But it was also that realization that like, this is their space. This is the client space. And, you know, people feel like,
Yeah, but why
I
should they
don't
be
belong in
talking
the shop.
vulgar at all? That's what I don't understand.
you know, that's like a kind of a back and forth thing. A lot of people are like, oh, you should be proper, like, because it's a business. But traditionally, barbershops have always kind of been the place to go.
That's where guys go and shit talk.
Yeah, to have those. I mean, I can seriously remember sitting at my Uncle Lenny's shop and being like 6 or 7 years old, and the dude's just like unfiltered, like just having the conversations that they were going to have. And
You know
I
what?
don't
That's what chicks
necessarily-
do at salons too.
Exactly.
That's just kind of
That's kind of what I tried to
What they
say. Like,
do.
you don't need to filter yourself. I'm
Yeah.
not like a delicate little baby.
Yeah,
like,
I
it's
I see your
fine, but-
point. I guess I'm thinking more vulgar, like really bad. You know, some men, you know, anyway.
Don't go ahead and harass people.
It was like that sometimes, honestly. But
yeah.
but so it just kind of came to this realization that like, you know, I did feel like an intruder, and I'm like, I can't be the only girl that feels that way. So obviously Friar Tuck's is a place for anybody, but Friar Tuck's was really built on the idea that like anybody literally could come in and not just be like welcomed, but be like embraced, and we can have conversation. Like, you know, I have gay people that will like come out to me in the chair because they're just like, I've never been able to like talk about it in a barbershop before because I haven't felt comfortable. Like, they can be really hyper masculine type places, and sometimes you just don't feel comfortable and you feel like censoring yourself. And the idea was to have a place that nobody feels like they have to censor themselves to a certain degree.
What's been like the most challenging thing with running a barbershop? Has there been like one or two things that have just been super challenging?
I think for me, for who I am as a person, because I'm very much like, I want to interact with my clients. I want to cut hair. I want to go to barber shows. And so like the day-to-day office stuff of running a business, the stuff that I sort of turned away from in my, you know, desk jobs or whatever, record keeping and stuff like that. It's been a lot of discipline to make myself do that stuff. But like, that's part of it too. You don't get to just do the fun stuff. You have to do the boring stuff too.
You have to do the business side.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to ask a question that I've always wondered as a client. How do you feel, honestly, when you realize a client went to a different barber?
Okay. That's a really good question.
Because I know it's like a relationship.
Yeah,
I still
totally.
feel so guilty about stopping going to hairdressers that I've gone to in the past.
And I used to feel that way too. And like, I was raised in it, and it was like, so my mom was a cosmetologist and my stepmom was also a cosmetologist. And when I moved from my mom's house to my dad's house and my stepmom did my hair, I felt awful. I was like, I just can't even tell my mom. Like, I just won't see her, and hopefully it'll be grown out by then, you know?
Wear a
Like,
hat.
yeah, right? Because you feel bad. Me personally, like, I really, really, really don't mind it. I have quite a few clients that will go between me and other barbers. For me right now, a big complaint that I get is my location. A lot of my clients are like, dude, I just can't find an extra 10, 15 minutes to drive outside of town. So I just hurry and stopped here or whatever.
Yeah.
And like, I really don't take offense to it. I think.
Do you
getting
think
a
some
haircut-
barbers do, though?
Yes, absolutely. I know barbers that are like, oh, my client went to so and so, and it does. It like,
But they'll
it can-
all say it doesn't matter.
yeah. Everybody's going to tell you. But I really genuinely, I feel like a haircut really can be such an experience. Like, I have people that will come and get a haircut before they need one just to sit in my chair and like feel the clippers on their neck. So like, if you're seeking an experience and for whatever reason this time around, I'm not the one to give it to you and it was somebody, that's fine. Like, go get it. That's fine. Just come back to me later or refer a friend or whatever it is. But
And plus, all that matters is they're in your chair then,
Exactly.
and you're making money off of them then.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and
well, and like, again, for me personally, like Salt Lake City is growing so fast.
Yeah.
There are so many heads of hair to cut. It's not even funny. Half the people don't even know that they should be going to a barber. And then you tell them and they're like, oh, I'm going to go find a barber. So like people are flooding into barbershops. Like, it's not,
do you think we're oversaturated? Do you think we're going to get oversaturated?
I think
With
people
barbershops
should,
or people?
Barbershops. There's a lot of them.
there are a lot of them.
barbers.
There are. But there are a lot of people.
Yeah, I think if the demand continues, and I think that's why a lot of these shops are kind of popping up. Again, I sort of saw a need that wasn't being filled and opened it up. And if you look around at the shops, I mean, they really are all different. Like, they're sort of giving off different vibes. You could look at it on the surface and say, oh, this is the same shop as any other shop, but it's not. As you get into the conversation, as you get into the service, as you get into just what it's like to be there for the 45 minutes of your haircut, it's a different experience everywhere you go. So
yeah, no,
yes,
I mean, I've been to a
I
handful
feel
of
like
barbers here in Salt Lake, and it's all a different experience.
yeah. And like, I feel like, I mean, we can cool it on opening shops in Salt Lake City, like looking for spaces every like other block. I'm like, there's a barbershop. And like, again, it's fine, but let's calm it down, people.
Yeah.
Stop trying to be your own boss, damn it.
Yeah, right? We can't all do it.
If somebody wanted to open up their own business, let's step outside a barbershop. Is there any advice you would give somebody?
Yes. There is a book, and the author escapes me right now, but it's called Rework.
Okay.
That is a good book.
So
I wish I could remember the author too.
Why is it good? Tell me. Teach me.
So I actually read the book after I opened Friar Tucks, but it validated so much of what I had done along the way, because I went sort of an unconventional route. My wife really helped me put together a business plan. She's much more like the type A. I'm like the dreamer of the two of us. So she's like, hey, like, come down from space. We need to do a spreadsheet of like your expenses and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so she really helped me put together like a business plan and stuff like that. But like, I was not interested in that. I was like, I need to find somebody. I need to tell them about my idea, about, investing in the community and what my barbershop is really going to mean to Salt Lake. And that was kind of how I started my business. And I started in a location that I knew wasn't going to be my end location. I always had ideas of moving out of there. I started with the bare minimum amount of money. There were aesthetic things that I really would have liked to do in the shop before I opened it up, but it was ready to go. And I was like, I can't just be spending money on things. Anyway, there were a number of things that I did that were, people told me this is not a good idea. Don't do that. And I did them anyway. And then literally a couple of months after, well, maybe about 6 months after I was open, I read this book, Rework. And it just validated so much of like, we waste a lot of time in the business world by doing those types of things, by having meetings when it could have been an email, by, spending hours pouring into a business plan when you could have just found funding elsewhere, whatever it is. Like, a lot of time is wasted, and a lot of creativity gets wasted in opening a business as well, because again, there's the idea of you have to do it this way. This is the only way to open a business, and Rework really says no.
You do it your way. Well, and a lot of startups will do things to prove that they're successful. Like when you're doing, like you said, all the aesthetic things that you would like to do. I know Dropbox bought a $100,000 Chrome Panda and put it in their foyer when they thought they made it. And then they lost a ton of money and everything went down. And so that's
Chrome Panda.
They're like, wait, great, you have your Chrome Panda, but you're
right, and nothing else. Yeah. So I think there were a lot of things that people were just like, it doesn't look nice enough. I mean, you're literally in a trailer park. Like, what are you doing? And it was just like, I need to get this going. I need to get this started. I need to create this space and start building it and kind of adapt as I'm growing. And that has allowed me to not be boxed in to any one thing, to saying when I started out, this is what I'm doing and this is my 10-year plan. And then you get boxed in there because you're like, I have a point A to point B. So you never really think outside of that. But this has kind of allowed me to be flexible and to, you can be a part of a commercial.
To what comes up and what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really cool.
That was also a thing that people were like, you can't put your barbershop in a commercial. Like it's not in the place aesthetically that you want it to be. And I was just like, Shonda Rhimes wants to send a crew of people to my barbershop. You're going to tell her no? Because I'm not.
Yeah.
So back to that commercial, you said it opened up the door. We didn't really, I guess we kind of skimmed over that a little bit. We could talk a little bit more about that, but are people flying from all over, or is it just more of a local thing?
I wouldn't say flying in from all over, but I definitely, I had somebody from Georgia stop in. She was already here on vacation visiting a friend, but she saw the commercial before she left and was like, this is one of the things that I put on my list of like, I'm going to Salt Lake City to do this. I've had tons of local people from Ogden to Provo and everywhere in between. I actually had some people drive up from St. George because they were so shocked that I was in Utah. Again, when you watch the commercial, it's not about my sexuality, and it really has nothing to do with that. But a lot of lesbians in the community saw me. Hello, I am one of you ladies.
And you have fantastic hair.
Thank you.
You always want to go to someone
my own
who has
hair,
good hair.
So, but yeah, that's true because you know where to go. But yeah, so I mean, it really has brought an influx of people. I mean, I had a lady from Australia call me and tell me that I was her mentor. She was in her 60s. I'm like, I don't even think I'm old enough to be your mentor. I don't even think I'm allowed. That's against the rules, lady. But yeah, so like it really has had a widespread. I mean, it's been viewed over 2 million times.
Is it on YouTube? So I'll link it up at iamsaltlake.com with this episode. Show notes.
Yeah.
Because is it like air on TV right now still, or is this probably done?
So I actually just had a couple of clients come in and say, oh, I saw your commercial. That's how I'm here. So I know it is still airing. I've never actually seen it on live TV, but I don't watch live TV very often.
Who does anymore? Does anybody really watch live?
People, because people were texting my mom, like, I just saw you on Logo.
Yeah.
They know their audience. They put me on the Logo channel. But also I was so because of that, Real Beauty Productions, again, they told a story about a girl named Kathleen. She founded Fat Girls Dance, which is an awesome like body positivity movement. Then there was my story, and then a story of a woman named Diana, who is a public school teacher in New York. She lost her leg in an accident and is still lifting weights and just like being a complete badass. So Real Beauty Productions wanted to kind of showcase that in telling those three stories, the crew that were a part of those storytellings were all women. And that was, I guess, the first time that's been done on a scale that big, to have a crew. And I mean, from lighting to sound, camera people, everybody in the room were women. And so in order to celebrate that, Dove made a commercial that aired during the Emmys last year. So that wasn't necessarily about me, but a clip of my video was kind of tossed into that. And that aired on the Emmys,
awesome.
Which was wild. I still have that on my DVR, so don't worry about it. If you want to watch it, you can come on over.
Bring the popcorn.
I should have brought my bar of Dove in here for you to sign.
Right.
You sign my Dove bar.
But like that felt insane to me. It was like the Emmys, y'all, and the first commercial break. Because let's be honest, if you're watching any commercial break during the Emmys, it's the first one. Because after that, you've fallen asleep.
Sure.
So yeah, it's brought a lot of good things to me. Yeah.
Let's kind of shift gears to Salt Lake City. I ask this on every podcast. Like if somebody was coming here, things you would recommend, places you would tell people to visit if they're from out of town, they've never been to Salt Lake. What would Kylee tell them to do or check out here?
Well, like first order of business is always food. I'm Italian, so like you're talking about your next meal when you're eating a meal. So there's a couple of places that I always recommend. I always recommend Even Stevens. I think.
Oh yeah, favorite sandwich from there.
The food, the Cuban with cran peño jelly.
Okay.
Haven't had that.
Little insider tip: the cran peño jelly gives it like that, like little acid kick that it needs. I don't know. It's delicious. So Even Stevens is definitely always a staple. I usually recommend Ruth's Diner to people that have never been here because I love that drive up immigration. I hate to admit that I'm completely off the bar scene these days.
Nothing wrong with that.
But I will usually recommend like Proper. I love a bar that has
a good burger,
skee
right?
ball and a good burger and like
it's Chuck E. Cheese for grown-ups.
Exactly. I went to this bar in Austin, Texas once that was just full of like video games and like life-size Jenga and chess and all this stuff. I'm like, this is the best thing ever. Just get us drunk and give us games. This is all we've ever wanted in our lives.
Isn't that kind of how Dave and Buster's is going to be when they open that up at the gateway?
Yes, they're opening up in the gateway.
Yeah, like because it's going to be like liquor, right? And, and
games.
Arcades.
Liquor. Guess where I'm going to be every weekend.
It literally is the adult Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah.
And then I always recommend a hike up either Ensign Peak or City Creek.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
think
just a
those are
nice
good
little hike to see the city.
Yeah. I've always had this idea that like Denver and Salt Lake are so similar because of the mountains, and that's why. But when you talk to people that are from Denver, you're still like an hour, maybe an hour and a half away from getting really into the mountains. But like we have the mountains, you got trails right up behind our capital. So I always recommend that too.
If there's one or two things you could change about Salt Lake City, is there anything you would change?
I think right now we're going through some serious growing pains.
Yeah.
And I think I would change the people that are resistant to that, kind of. I think there's a lot of like, but we always do it this way. And it's like, well, we can't do it that way anymore. I think the mayor caught a lot of flack for the Rio Grande, you know, the relocating of the homeless shelters and stuff. And yeah, it hasn't been the smoothest thing ever, but I think it was like an outside the box idea. And for a city who's growing as quickly as we are, and I think it's in a really unique way as well, I think we kind of owe it to ourselves to try and think outside the box a little bit more.
You can't change if you don't try.
Exactly. And again, I think it's that idea behind like that rework book. Like maybe we grow in a different way than Portland did or Seattle did or whatever it was. Like, so yeah, so I would just kind of change the resistance to how we're growing and
it's interesting to see the resistance because it's like, it seems like there's more people that aren't resisting and you still got those couple people that are just causing havoc.
Making a fuss.
Yeah, making a fuss. And it's like the rest of us are like, hey, we want change here.
I think that's how it's always felt as a Salt Laker, though. Yeah. I mean, we're kind of this little blue dot in a red state. And I think we as a whole in Salt Lake are always like, oh, we want to be progressive. Like we, you know, before gay marriage was legal, we were all in Salt Lake going like, we have a lesbian mayor. Like, we don't care. Why, why is this? But the outliers, the red parts of the state were kind of holding that back. And I think that's kind of what's happening as well. There's a lot of, or not a lot, there are a few like powerful forces that are kind of resisting the change, but the masses are sort of overpowering that, I think.
Anything else before we run down the list of all the contacts and addresses and all that stuff, Chrissy, before we let Kylie go?
If you could give our listeners one piece of advice, what would it be?
Go for it. Like whatever that thing is that's been kind of nagging you in the back of the head. I want to try my hand at this or that. Do that.
You only got one life.
Do that thing. It's true.
Yeah. Now, how can people, let's run down like addresses. Is Friar, do you have a website?
I have a Facebook. Yeah, you can find me on Facebook, Friar Tuck's Barbershop. You can find me on Instagram at Friar Tuck's Barbers. You can call or text me. My phone number is 801-870-9087. It will be me answering the phone. Right now, my address is 1594 West, 400 South, inside Sherwood Forest. But in a couple of weeks, that changes. I will be at 11 West, 1700 South. So just on the corner of 17 South and Main Street.
Do you have an exact date for that or not yet?
I don't.
Just keep up on Facebook.
Yeah,
probably.
Keep up on the Facebook, but we're like weeks away, a week and a half, 2 weeks away.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Very, very close. Yes.
So and then they would call or text you to book an appointment for a haircut. Beard trims. You do beard trims too.
Yes.
Straight razor shaves.
Yep. Straight razor shaves.
Always wanted to get
scalp
one.
treatments.
Always wanted to get a straight.
You deserve one.
Come in. Come do it.
I'm not going to take the beard off.
You don't have to. You can do the line up on the cheeks and underneath here. And I actually had a straight razor shave when I was in school because I was like, I can't take a blade to somebody's face if I don't know how it feels. It was like the most relaxing.
Is it?
I fell asleep.
Wow, I'm going to get
Could
one.
I go get one? Can I go into a barbershop and get one? Just for the feel of it?
Go to Kylie. She'll give you one.
Oh my gosh. Come in. We will do it.
I might do that.
We'll Facebook
Please
Live
do.
it. We'll
Oh my gosh.
It's happening. I'm going to hold you guys
I'm
to
so
this.
down with this.
It's happening.
I'm a very furry lady. This is perfect.
No.
And we'll leave that there.
Anyway, so I'll put all those links at iamsaltlake.com. This will actually be episode 313 on there. If people aren't writing this down, you can go there and check it out. And thank you so much for coming on and doing the podcast.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet.
It was awesome.
Hey, many thanks again to Kylee Howell for coming on this episode of the podcast. Head on over to our website, iamsaltlake.com/313 for all the links and whatnot to connect with her and to find out more about Friar Tuck, the Friar Tuck Barbershop.
And if you liked my impression of Friar Tuck, hit me up and tell me how great it was.
I don't think she's kidding, guys. But pay attention. We're going to put both addresses on the show notes at, like I said, iamsaltlake.com/313. Head on over to our barbershop. Get a haircut, straight razor shave. I don't know.
I'm going to get a straight razor shave.
And let her know you heard her on the podcast. And hey, if you love this podcast and you want to support it, remember you can make a one-time donation to help keep the show moving forward. You can just go to paypal.me/iamsaltlake. You can make a one-time donation for any amount. A lot of people have been asking that, kind of how they can help keep the podcast going forward and how we get paid and all that. And we do it through the lovely donations and sponsors and
Easy
all of
peasy.
that. Hey, Chrissy and I were on a couple of podcasts, though, this last week that we wanted to mention here really quickly. I'll let you tell about yours, Chrissy.
I was lucky enough to talk with Margaret Schlachter from the Dirt in Your Skirt podcast.
And I'll put that link at with the show notes for episode 313 at iamsaltlake.com/313 so you can listen to it. What did you talk about, Chrissy?
Oh, man. We talked about our 2 podcasts and basically a little bit about parenthood.
And you
if
talked
that's
about
exciting.
app
And we talked
development.
about app development, and I geeked out a little bit. And so that's what we talked about.
I thought it was great. The best part about it is I'm married to you, Chrissy, and I learned something.
What's one thing you learned about me that you didn't know?
Oh, my mind's blank now.
Of course it is.
Way to put me on the spot here, Chrissy.
I'm just teasing.
Hey, I was on a podcast called Consider Our Knowledge, which actually we did a podcast. I did a podcast with Connor Bentley from Consider Our Knowledge. Gosh, back in the episode 100s, he was actually on this show. So it was really cool to get to go on his podcast.
Yeah.
His podcast is so different because it's scripted.
Yeah.
And you play a different character.
It was really fun to listen to. Actually, they have the short bits. They're pretty well written.
It was like an 11-minute show. It's an 11-minute podcast. I'll put the links up at iamsaltlake.com with episode 313. Go listen to both of those podcasts. If you like them, subscribe. They're both here from Salt Lake City. Hey, that's going to do it for this episode. Remember to share it with your family and friends on any of your favorite social medias. Take a screenshot of what you're listening to right now and share it. Tag us in it so we know you're listening. You guys have a great week. Get out and enjoy the city. Support local. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Good night, Grammy.
And rest in peace, Bug.